I am a world citizen. Every citizen is my own.
Between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
О проведении специальной военной операции.
A country's comprehensive national strength is the total of all of the strengths that relate to the country's existence and growth, and that the country owns or controls at a certain point in time. These strengths may be broken down into many categories. These consist of its capabilities for economic activity, its scientific capabilities, its capabilities for conducting international activities, its capabilities for conducting government action, its capabilities for social development, its resource capabilities, its military capabilities, and its national cohesion, and includes such elements as the economy, science and technology, education, military affairs, foreign diplomacy, population, and resources, in addition to government authority and the national spirit, that is the very soul of national strength. India is well on its way to becoming a powerhouse, and is leaving its colonial history in the dust, as it concentrates its efforts on becoming more advanced in the fields of science, technology, the economy, and the military. Prime Minister Narendra Modi had no experience with foreign policy before his party won an amazing election in 2014 and become the Prime Minister of the country. As Chief Minister of the western state of Gujarat, he was known for being good at managing the economy. But after becoming Prime Minister, he had to prove his skills in foreign policy also. India's biggest success rides on diplomacy, which had begun ever since the 1960s, because of world-renowned leaders like Lal Bahadur Shastri, Indira Gandhi, Dr. Manmohan Singh, and Atal Bihari Vajpayee. The India which Narendra Modi was handed in 2014 was best of its form ever since independence. Modi was successful in carrying the legacy forward, where he made one-to-one connections with the head of states. India was successfully able to balance the Western and Eastern blocs up to an extent. The crisis in Ukraine shows this the best. Since there was no easy way to end the crisis right away, New Delhi has become a center of world diplomacy because of its non-aligned stance on sanctions against Russia. India was able to buy cheap Russian oil and stay friends with the West at the same time. Also during COVID, Prime Minister Modi asked the US President not to stop the vaccine supply chain for India and the world. As a direct result of this request, the US administration granted India an exemption from the Defense Production Act, which allowed India's vaccination program to run without a hitch. India has a chance to change the international order because it has the fifth largest economy in the world and the third largest defense budget. South Bloc has been making sure that the political will of the country is in line with new international opportunities. However, diplomacy has its limits. For example, India and Pakistan's attempts at diplomacy never worked because Pakistan broke the Shimla Agreement of 1972. The main point of the Shimla Agreement is that the two countries agree to settle their differences through peaceful means, such as bilateral dialogue or any other peaceful way that they both agree on. In reality, the pact hasn't stopped the relationship between the two countries from getting so bad that it leads to war, like it did during the Kargil War in 1999. In short, diplomacy doesn't work when pirates and failed states are around. Recently, the Guinea Navy has been holding 16 Indian sailors as hostages for almost 3 months, and the sailors' families have asked that they be set free right away. The sailors from India are being held in an African country, and their families are worried about their safety. On August 8, a ship from Norway with Indian crew stopped at the international maritime boundary of Nigeria. The ship's 26-person crew, which included 16 Indians, was waiting for their turn when, the next day, the Guinean Navy stopped the ship and crew because they thought they had come to steal oil. They said that 15 of them were taken to a hotel, and 11 of them were kept on the ship. The family said they were worried that the crew of the ship would be sent to Nigeria by the Guinean Navy. The Indian government is working closely with the governments of Equatorial Guinea and Nigeria to get the crew members held in the country released as soon as possible. Gaurav Arora is one of the 16 Indian crew members detained by the Navy of Equatorial Guinea. Gaurav's sister, Komal Aurora, said that the Indians could be falsely accused and handed over to Nigeria by the Guinean Navy. We all know that the place is very sensitive. We don't know how the Nigerian government will treat Indians after the handover, so the government must step in. We must stop it, she said. There is no doubt, Indian diplomats are working hard to get their people out, just like they did during the Ukraine crisis. And yes, India will bring all of the sailors back to their country safe and sound, but let me give you a hypothetical situation. Instead of doing proactive diplomacy, what if India put one of its aircraft carriers close to the coast? You will probably wonder what a single aircraft carrier could do to a country. To answer this, modern aircraft carriers never travel alone. Instead, they are usually accompanied by a large flotilla of other ships, such as destroyers, which are referred to together as the carrier battle group, and a modern carrier battle group is nearly invincible. The mere existence of an aircraft carrier will almost certainly exert a significant amount of psychological pressure. Sure, an aircraft carrier is a type of warship that is made to launch and land planes. It is like a floating airbase. However, aircraft carriers have always been used to change things without firing a shot. This is called gunboat diplomacy. An aircraft carrier can poise in international waters, maybe not too far from the coast, and exert pressure and shape events without sending soldiers on the ground or getting into another country's airspace. During the 1971 war, the Americans tried to use gunboat diplomacy to put pressure on India. However, they were unable to do so, because India secretly activated a clause in the Indo-Soviet Friendship Treaty that said either side would come to the defense of the other. Admiral Vladimir Kruglyakov was in charge of the Russian naval task force from Vladivostok's Pacific Fleet. It was made up of a cruiser, a destroyer, and 2 attack submarines. They stopped Task Force 74 by surfacing their submarines in front of the USS Enterprise, opening the missile tubes, and blocking the American ships. However, gunboat diplomacy on a small country, on the other hand, would make India look like a bully. And the government of India maintains friendly relations, not only with all of the countries that are located on the African continent, but also with the majority of the nations that are located throughout the globe, with the exception of China, Turkey, and Pakistan. India and North Korea even get along nicely. Trade and political connections between the two nations are expanding. North Korean embassy is located in New Delhi, whereas the Indian embassy is located in Pyongyang. One of North Korea's most significant economic partners, and a significant source of food aid, was India. So, India would like to avoid jeopardizing these relationships with these African nations, which it has been building for years, and giving China more direct routes to encircle India. Is there evidence that India's foreign policy has become more aggressive? The 3 most important tools of statecraft in any country are diplomacy, intelligence, and the military. India has never used its military to intimidate other countries, like China does with smaller ones. Instead, India has tried to improve the 3 tools by using political will and effective delivery mechanisms. The main question that has been asked over and over again about India's foreign policy under the Modi government is whether or not the foreign policy outlook is the same or different. We can unequivocally declare that India's foreign policy is not the same, since the fear of upsetting other nations has haunted Indian foreign policy for many decades, until the Modi administration broke this anxiety. Washington put a lot of pressure on India to condemn Russia for invading Ukraine, but India didn't. Instead, it stayed neutral and kept buying cheap oil from Russia to meet the needs of its 1.34 billion people. As Hardeep Singh, India's Minister of Petroleum and Natural Gas, told a CNN anchor, India has no moral conflict with buying cheap Russian oil, because the government has a duty to its citizens, and will buy whatever is available on the world market. So, we can see that India's foreign policy is obviously shifting, and if the nation is unable to achieve its aims via diplomatic channels, it will be compelled to turn to more strong measures, including maybe utilizing its military.